Good morning, golf fans. It's your boy Gsluke here with our live stream for round 3 of the Pebble Beach Pro-Am. Moving day was pretty decent from the Showdown side. In fact, had about a 1.5x day here. Of course, a lot of tout sites talked about only playing Spyglass. Luckily, we were closer to a 60-40 split, right? I mentioned I thought they'd play pretty close, maybe Spyglass, the slightly easier of the two. That did not end up being the case. In fact, Pebble Beach was actually the easier course. But what we ended up looking out on was no one was playing Pebble Beach. I mean, all of those guys up there in the 10K range were like 10, 15% owned at the most. So by taking like 30, 35% of some of the guys that we took, we got well over the field. And like Scotty Scheffler, for example, I had like 40% of yesterday, was carrying a lot of my lineups. So it could have been better if we full stacked Pebble. Probably would have been a takedown or two, but we'll take it. Survived what was honestly a little bit of a bad read from my part, but hey, the round 1 averages were what they were, right? We went off of those as a database type of channel, and I don't regret that at all, right? The talent gap difference clearly mattered between the two golf courses, and I think that's why we saw that split, right? Day 1, all of those studs on Spyglass made it look a little bit easier. Then they went over there to Pebble Beach and did the same thing, right? They took what was probably the easier golf course on day 1 and then lowered that scoring average with all being studs, adding a stroke or two to the field. So I think that's what happened. Moving day over for the prop side should hopefully be a little bit better than today. Days 1 and 2 have been right about break even. So I'm hoping to get into the green in terms of our props, and we'll try and do that just here on the stream. So we're going to go through the weather, talk about the golf course a little bit. We'll go over some of the data where you can see, right, a lot easier on the Pebble side than what we had with Spyglass. That was unexpected, right? I thought if anything, it might play slightly easier, right? I mentioned that possibility in our round 2 stream, but I didn't think it was going to play a stroke and a half easier. So blew my expectations out of the water. I got Robert down there, says if you ran back Thomas, Fitzpatrick, Hostler, and Mitchell, you probably would have done well. Yeah, sounds about right, right? The one guy I took on Pebble and really took a stand on was Scotty Scheffler, because my thinking was, right, he throws darts, he goes out there and absolutely kills it. And no matter what golf course you're playing, I mean, he's done it at the freaking API before. He's done it at the Players, right? He's gone nuclear, shot like 8, 9 under par. My thinking was if he can do it there, he can certainly do it at Pebble Beach, right? So that's why I played him yesterday. Spyglass was not the play. In hindsight, for sure, was not the play, right? But I would say you had to take a pretty big leap of faith to go out there and only play Pebble guys. I mean, you could have said the thing about the scoring averages, right? The talent gap difference between the two golf courses, but you couldn't have seen a 1.5 shot difference coming. That's for damn sure. If you did, I mean, you're Nostradamus. I'll say that much. What's going on? Why I win? What's going on? Do ownership numbers matter at all in 50-50 in double ups? They do, Dave, but for a different reason, right? So in GPPs, we're worried about getting different, right? Making sure that we're, unique enough to actually move up leaderboards. In cash, it's actually an incentive to go out there and play some of your higher owned players. So I would say that it's a little bit of a different dynamic. If you play a high-owned player in cash and then they don't work out, let's say they're 70, 75% owned, like you'll get, especially on like a Sunday Showdown slate out there for cash, then you don't really get burned, right? 75% of the field goes down with the ship there. Whereas, in a GPP, a 75% owned play would be ridiculous. It'd be an automatic fade. So yeah, it matters, but for a different reason. You were too cute first and second round trying to pick lesser owned players. You're going to go back to the formula you've been using. Yay, if you like a little bit of chalk, go with it. You should definitely not be taking chalk at all 6 spots. So sometimes we do reviews of like our, community contest. We're probably going to get back to that here at some point here in 2024, especially now that football is about to end. We'll have a lot more time on my end to do those sort of things, those extra pieces of content. And what I've noticed is that a lot of people that start taking pivots, right? They'll hear touts talk about getting different, getting unique, all of those buzzwords, and they'll do it at all 6 spots, right? Rather than going out there, maybe mixing in 1-2 pivots and then taking 4 pieces of reasonable chalk, they go out there and they go 6 pivots, balls to the wall type of strategy. So if that was maybe what you're doing, I mean, even 3-4 pivots, right, is a lot for a lineup. Yeah, mix it in like a 3-3 split. I think you'll like that a lot. That's the best way to do it. What's going on, Tyler? And speaking of, I've got to get some coffee in my system. But now let's talk about some weather here, which for Saturday, all things considered, looks pretty beautiful out there. So let's bring up the HRRR model, which of course is going to be the most accurate. The only real thing we're going to have to worry about here is this weather towards the end of the day. So you can see here at 3 p.m. where my cursor is here, big block of storms coming in, which are going to lead into some nasty stuff over there on Sunday. So what we have to ask ourselves here, and the impact for DFS, for props, all of that, right, is this going to happen during play? Now, they're starting play a little bit earlier today, in fact, right around 8 a.m. local time, in hopes of trying to avoid a lot of this nasty stuff coming through. But it's going to come through at like 3, 4 p.m. So you're talking about like a 6 to 8 hour window. I would say that most likely play is going to be done before the heavy stuff comes through. And the winds before that, I mean, are 3, 4 miles an hour, right? You can see at 3 p.m. when the first storm comes, it kicks up to like 9 miles an hour, but that's not that significant, right? I mean, that's what the winds were out there for round 2. So in terms of conditions, I think we have arguably our best weather day today. I put that with an asterisk because Pebble Beach is very variable. It's very unpredictable when it comes to the weather. Andrew Putnam on ESPN Plus, they interviewed him on the range, and he said exactly that, right? Pretty much whatever the weathermen say, prepare for the opposite. So what we could see here, and what I think is reasonable to maybe play a few lineups for, is assuming that the rain comes in a little bit earlier. Maybe that they don't finish time and, play in time, and that you want to stack some of the first few tee times. I think it's unlikely. If I was going to do that in my GPP lineups, I'm playing about 30 lineups for today. I think I took like 3 of them and only stacked some of the first tee times out. But other than that, I don't see a huge weather edge, right? They're going in threesomes off of both tees. So if you were going to try and find that weather edge, it would have to be the guys in the middle of the pack. And I think even that's a little bit of a stretch. So I like to throw some of the weather correlations out there because, like I said, the weather is so unpredictable that if you want to prepare for chaos, right, I think that would be how you do it, right? You take some of the first groups off, and maybe the first 4 or 5 groups, and just use those guys exclusively in a few lineups. I did that for shits and giggles, just to go out there, right? Just in case stuff ends up happening that we don't expect. If you look at some of the other models here, you'll see they have the rain coming through the same time. Medio Blue has it coming in around 2 p.m., so a little bit earlier. And if that happens, right, that might actually bleed into play. Let's see Icon. Same thing, like 2 p.m. So once again, could bleed into play there. And then GFS has it coming in at 5 p.m. So it could, play would definitely be over by the time we get to 5 p.m. They're going off at 8 a.m. local again. So they're playing like 6-hour rounds at the very most. So that probably has them finishing around the 2, maybe 2:30 for some of your leaders. They're probably going to play in like 5 hours. And I think your last tee times, actually, we don't even have to guess. Let me just bring up the PGA site. I believe the last tee times today, actually, we'll just go to the PGA Tour Twitter. We'll do that. It's easy. I already have it up. I believe the last tee time is like 10 something. So let's double check it. The last set of tee times is 10:35. So if they're going off at 10:35, they're playing a 5-hour round. That means they're going to be finishing at like 3:30. If they're going quickly, if they're trying to get it done fast because they know that rain's coming, maybe they try and finish by 3 p.m. But that's right when the storms are coming through. So like I said, I don't see a huge weather edge out here. But if you want to prepare for anything, I guess it would be to go out there and hope those storms come through early and wash out some of those last groups. And it's probably only going to be like their last 4 or 5 holes that they'd be playing in the rain. The wind could kick up. So if it's rainy and windy, like that could have an effect for 4 or 5 holes. Like maybe it does raise the scoring average, but it's not going to be like a stroke difference, right? It's only a 4 or 5 hole stretch, right? You can only gain or lose so many strokes in a 4 or 5 hole stretch. So don't go crazy with that kind of edge if you decide to go with it. I will say that the early tee times, right, usually already have an advantage, right? So that's kind of like the baked in edge that you can rely on no matter what, right? If you take some of the early tee times, you've got the greens that aren't as scuffed up. You've got more receptive conditions, usually calmer conditions right there earlier in the day. A lot of times it's no wind for the first 3-4 hours. You could use that as an argument for that too, I would say, for some of the guys at the first few groups. Let's see, new to all this, let's say you have $100 to play with for a day. Is a better strategy to make one lineup you love and play for the full bankroll, or make 3 to 4 lineups and spread it out? I'm more of a spread it out type of guy, Steven. I like to diversify my portfolio. You could, of course, go out there with a single entry, but I'm more of like the 3-4 lineup kind of guy for me personally. You got a nice little coffee. Let's go. Cheers to you out there. Speaking of, I got to remind myself to sip this thing. I'm terrible with drinking on stream. I just like yapping out here. Notes this morning. You've got Fleetwood, Poston, Brian Harmon as contrarian scores. I like it. I think that Poston might get a little bit of attention. So let me see what I've got him at. I've got him at 11% ownership. That's not out of hand. So yeah, I like him today. I'll say that much. I think he fits this golf course quite well. Putting pretty well this week, which is encouraging. And then you had, who was it? Brian Harmon, and the other one was good old Tommy Fleetwood. Agree with you on both of those. Tommy Fleetwood, right? What is he? -3 at this point. So he's not that expensive, right? Only $8,900. Also one of the lower owned players in that range. Always has upside. And if you're -3, right, you're not playing horribly at this point, but you're about field average through 2 rounds. So if you're going to go out there, make a move, right, get into contention, as somebody like Tommy Ladd is aiming to do, right? He doesn't care about finishing at 40th. Well, he's got to make some birdies. So I like that for him. I like that he's got the tied in motivation there. And who was the other one? We had Brian Harmon, right? I'm maybe not as bullish on Brian Harmon because he's a slightly lower birdie percentage player. But look at this ownership, right? 6.8%, essentially unowned. Can get hot with the putter. I have to say, was not good with the putter yesterday. Excuse me, guys. I was considering playing him for a few birdie props over on Prize Picks and Underdog. They had him at 4 birdies on Underdog. I think he might even still be there at this point. I held off because he wasn't making anything, right? And normally Brian Harmon, his path to making a lot of birdies, right, is filling it up with the flat stick. Now, it's not impossible for him to turn that around, right? That's why I think he's a solid play if you're looking for differentiation at 6.8%. But I was personally turned off a little bit by the putting. It was why I didn't play him out there for props. Let's see. Morning all in the chat. What's going on, Jim? The pins don't look terrible. Yeah, I would say they look neutral, right? A lot of them are in similar levels of difficulties compared to the first few rounds. I would say that hole number 6, so the second par 5, one where you had to go up that big shelf, the iconic one, close to the Pacific Ocean out there. That one's going to play a little bit harder. It's tucked in the back left. It's a little cove back there. I think if you go for it in 2, right, you're going to have like a 40-foot eagle putt at the very best. And I think you're going to see a lot of people laying up on that hole. So I think that one may be slightly harder, but it's all right. You got your coffee brewing. Let's get it. What's going on, Mark the Shark? Hope you're doing well, man. Absolutely. And I got my coffee in hand. A little bit of a cough this morning for some reason, but hey, that's what you get when you're on the golf course all day smoking cigars with your buddies. Which, speaking of, that's why we didn't do the stream last night. I wanted to do a night stream again, but I was out with some buddies playing golf yesterday, scramble. We absolutely kicked ass. Me and my buddy Ian beat my brother and one of my other buddies by 6 holes. And my brother's probably the best player of all of us. And the buddy he was playing with, my buddy too, not that bad himself. So we were probably the underdogs coming in, and we wiped the floor with them. So that felt good. Hasn't happened for a while. And I don't want to yap too much about my game, but I made so many putts, which just does not happen. I am a lot better over there with the ball striking, but we were a damn good putter yesterday. That's for sure. All right, enough yapping about my game. Let's talk about a few players that I like for today. And I see Blake's talking about Liv. We are going to go over Live Golf. That'll be at the end when we're talking about props. So we're going to go like PGA props and then get over there to Live. And yeah, Forbes did take the L. I'm kind of hoping he's down there in chat because he can't even refute it. He did. My buddy Ian, so full transparency, I was pretty okay with the ball striking, hit some good tee shots. My buddy Ian was unconscious. So if he's watching this too, they tune into these streams every once in a while. You carried the team. Just for full transparency, he carried the team. It wasn't really me. My putting was good, though. All right, in terms of guys I like here, though, we got Victor Hovland at $10,300, and it's the same kind of idea as a Tommy Fleetwood, right? I know we mentioned before about him being a chaser that has to make birdies to move up the board. Well, you've got that with Victor Hovland, right? I think conditions are conducive to guys going super low today. The pin locations, I don't think they're easy, but I also don't think they're difficult in terms of your round 3 scoring. So at 18.9%, what I think is a pretty reasonable ownership number. You know, you put them in 35% of lineups, probably closer to 35% of lineups, and you've got your leverage to the field right there. So in terms of points per dollar projection, I believe he was the number 1 play on the entire slate, right? He's almost a whole $1,000 cheaper than somebody like a Rory McIlroy and Scotty Scheffler. Now, I'm not that worried about the salary end of things. Over here on a Showdown slate, it's usually very soft from the pricing angle. So it's not usually something that you have to consider. but he is $1,000 cheaper, right? You could maybe spend up from an 8K guy to a 9K guy, right? By spending down for a Victor Hovland, and their projections are almost identical in terms of projected points. So I like the chasers. I like Hovland coming into the week, has a really good track record around Pebble Beach. And now we're playing at Pebble for the last 2 days, right? So some of these course horses, which the next play we're going over is another course horse, another guy that I'm an absolute sucker for in terms of playing. But these course horses are going to show up on the weekend, right? When conditions, especially on Sunday, are going to deteriorate. When you're playing the same golf course, Pebble Beach, that they have that experience at, that's where you're going to see that separation, right? Not so much over the first 2 days. So next up, another course horse. We've got Jordan Spieth at 14.9%. Got back to at least putting decently in round two. Still missed a lot of makeable birdie putts out there, but now is still on Pebble, right? He played Pebble yesterday, got used to those greens, and now gets to play it for a second consecutive day. And one thing that I'll say about the course setup is that they're getting the greens slower and slower by the time we get to Sunday so that they can actually play out there. It's supposed to be like 40, 50 mile an hour winds. And the tour staff has said that they're going to make the greens 0.5 on the stimp meter lower every single day. So starting at, I think at like 13 on the stimp meter, they're going to get it the whole way down to 11 on Pebble Beach. So for Jordan Spieth that played Pebble yesterday, right, he's going to be going back to the same course with greens that are 0.5 slower on the stimp meter. That's not that big of an adjustment, right? You'll see that night to night a lot of times on the PGA Tour, about a 0.5 adjustment out there. The adjustment, the one that's a little bit harder to make, and why I think like the tee times were rigged this week, because they're trying to get all the best players at the top of the board, in my opinion, is because the guys that are already playing on Pebble don't have to make that adjustment, but the ones that are on Spyglass do. The greens over there aren't going to change. They aren't going to change that setup because it's such a private establishment. It's such a high-level establishment, higher level than a Pebble Beach, frankly, in terms of how it's esteemed in the golf world. They're not going to make accommodations for the PGA Tour like that. So, and again, they're not playing on Saturday and Sunday, right out there for the PGA Tour, right? So they don't have to slow down the greens in anticipation of the wins on Sunday. So that golf course was still running at full speed yesterday. You saw that with the scoring. I also think that maybe led into that scoring discrepancy, right? The 1.5 shot difference. And Jordan Spieth's going to be used to it. Guys like Victor Hovland, right, that played Pebble Beach are going to be relatively used to it. The guys like Xander Schauffele that have to come from Spyglass back over to Pebble Beach, I worry about a little bit. In fact, that's why I'm not taking him as a chaser at 10.1%. So I didn't take that plunge on him. There are other guys I'd prefer in terms of a chaser, like a Rory McIlroy, for example, that was playing on Pebble Beach the day before. So if you're going to look for a micro edge, I think that's one you can take. The guys that played Pebble yesterday might be a little bit more accustomed to those greens and how much they were already starting to slow down, rather than a whole stimp meter difference. Actually, I think it's 1.5. They ran those things at Spyglass at like 13.5. They ran them super quick over there. It might be a 1.5 difference on the stimp meter. Down here in the AK range, I like a Tony Finau as a chaser. They're at even par. He's not nearly in the thick of things as you have with some of the other golfers, but is extremely low owned, right? 8.7%. He's my version of Brian Harman, right? Who somebody mentioned before down in chat at 6.8%. My version of that is Tony Finau over here. Just a birdie maker, right? Somebody that can get hot with the irons. Used to get hot with the putter every once in a while, but not so much of late, right? Has been absolute horseshit on the greens, which I do not expect to change. If he's going to have a ceiling round, I would expect him to maybe gain like a half a stroke putting to the field. It is going to be all the irons, right? It's going to be him throwing darts on these receptive greens and taking advantage of that. And his driver has been, I would say, a little bit off this week. It's why he's made a few of the bogeys that he has. And he's going to have a day there too. So that's why he's low owned, right? He's not playing his best golf, right? That's why he's not 20%, 16, 17% owned, like you have some of the guys around him, and why you can get him at a little bit of leverage to the field. So there's always opportunity cost with taking some of these pivots, but you can see I'm mixing him in with guys that have some ownership, right? Like a Victor Hovland isn't a pivot by any means, right? I definitely wouldn't call Jordan Spieth at 15% a true pivot, right down there at -3. But somebody like Tony Finau truly is, right? When he's half the ownership of most of the other guys around him. And you could say the same thing about a Sungjae Im, right there at +4, only 7.2% owned. Those would be your true pivots. And they're hard to make, especially with Sungjae, who's there at +4. But we've seen crazier things happen. And just a little hint to you guys out there, I very well might be playing Sungjae today. out there in my lineups, taking a little bit of a gambler approach to this 8K range. If there's a range to do it, I feel like it is this 8K range because you have a lot of high upside players, but also players that seemingly have no floor, right? Like these guys like Tony Finau, Sanjay, if they get off to a bad start, let's say they're like 2 over, they're their first 3 holes, you might as well take them off the shot tracker, right? You might as well unstar them off your favorites list over there on the PGA Tour app. If they start horribly, it is probably going to go sideways quick. That's just the nature of playing guys at the bottom of the board, especially on Sunday, even more so on Sundays, of course. Down here in the 7K range, player I want to talk about is Tom Kim, who we talked about yesterday, absolutely went off with a -5 bogey-free round. He's 13.4%, so he's getting some attention, right? So I wouldn't call him a pivot by any means, but he's not mega chalky either. What I like is the course fit, of course, right? He was a core play coming into the week, and if we can get a guy like Tom Kim at 13%, or Hovland, who I really liked, initially this week at only 19%, like I'm going to take advantage of that, right? That's about average ownership on a player that I think is a top tier course fit. And on top of that is aggressive and in a position where he has to go out there and make birdies. So Tom Kim, a little bit closer to that lead, but is still 5 shots off of the leaders right there at -11. He's got to go out there and make a shit ton of birdies. So I like that for him. And I kind of worry about the guys at -11, right? So your Dietrichs, your Abergs, your Scotty Schefflers, right, who's tied for the lead, I kind of worry about how aggressive they're going to be, right? They know that they're going to have to make birdies. They know that guys are going to start chasing them down, but I don't know if they're going to go after every single pin. There are some devious ones today. There are some tucked pin locations. Like I said, in that one par 5, it's way back in the little cove. Some of the longer holes have tucked back pin locations. Guys like Scotty, up there, even like Cantlay at -10, I lump into the same type of argument here. Heck, maybe even more Kyle at -7 is going to feel this way a bit. There's harder holes. Center of the green is probably just fine, right? That's probably their objective on a lot of those holes. Whereas Jordan Spieth is literally going to have to hit at every pin, right? If he's going to try and get up to like a -8, -9 score, which is pretty much what he needs to get at least to some semblance of a chance to win, especially get top 5, top 10 placement points, he's going to have to go out there and aim at those pins. And I prefer the guys, right, that are going to go for it. Now, you might make bogeys when you're going for it, right, which is why they're a little bit more volatile than some of these other players that are going to be more conservative. But it's all about birdie production in Showdown, right? It's all about putting up those fantasy points, and getting those fantasy points comes down to making birdies. And you want the players that are going for birdies, right? Not so much that are trying to get a bogey-free round out there. Bogey-free round would be great, but also really hard to come by at Pebble Beach. We got Corey Connors down here in the 7K range, also Ricky Fowler. I'm going to lump these two together. Relatively low ownership numbers. I'll say that they're not pivots in this range. I look at this. Corey Connors is higher owned than most guys around him. And same thing with Ricky Fowler. So these aren't going to be plays that you use to get mega different to the field. But at the same time, I think they're severely mispriced, right? Corey Connors, probably $400, $500 too cheap. And Ricky Fowler, based on how he's playing so far, probably $1,000 too cheap. So just guys I'm mixing in, I'm not taking any mega chalk in any one spot in my lineup, really in any lineups that I'm taking today. So I can afford to take, right, guys that are medium ownership down here in the bottom end of the 7s. And then I think the last play we're going to go through here, is Erik van Rooyen at $6,600. 6% owned, -5, playing decently to this point. Is one of my really good course fits coming in. On my course breakdown video, I was going through some of the bet the number models on there. A few that I actually customized myself too. And Erik van Rooyen just kept showing up in every category. Whether it was POA putting, whether it was a lot of the iron ranges that I was looking at. So the wedges, he showed up. Even the long irons, he was showing up there too. Birdie or better percentage was showing up. Checking a lot of the boxes I was looking at Pebble. And on top of that, he's playing well. He's not mega chalk at 6%. And he's a high birdie percentage player, right? Aggressive, has to be aggressive there at -5. Now, probably has a little bit more to lose, right, than, let's say, a Tommy Fleetwood or a Jordan Spieth at -3, right? That truly has nothing to lose in terms of their career status. Erik van Rooyen, right, would love a top 20 this week, but even to get into the top 20, he's going to have to shoot like a -4, -5 today. So he's going to have to be aggressive. He can't just take a super conservative approach. And given that he's really good course fit and he's low owned, it's the kind of guy that I'm looking to get to. So that's what we got for DFS. Let's go over any last second questions there. And then we're going to hop over to props, which is going to include Live Golf, which I'm looking forward to. Xander 10% smash. So the only worry was the one I gave you guys before, right? Is him coming from Spyglass over to Pebble and having to adjust to the greens. That's probably me overthinking it. You could definitely play him at 10%. That's for sure. What's going on, Samuel? Thoughts on Fowler? Love him. So just probably gave you my thoughts there, but yeah, I'm on him. Your big boy plays. You've got Cole, Fleetwood, and Hovland. Yeah, I'm with you on 3 of those 4. Actually, let me double check. I might be on you on 4 of 4. Let me double check if I had Eric Cole. I feel like I do. Built my lineups last night. Let's see. Eric Cole, where you at? I went past him. I do. Yep. I'm on all 4 of those. I'm with you. Morning. Always appreciate your time and info. Thank you. Of course. Thank you, Primo. Cheers to that. Sipping our coffee over here. With the amateurs gone, do you think they'll toughen it up today? Usually they only have 1 round to do so. So I kind of think so with the pins, right? So that's what I was mentioning before. Most times when we see a moving day slate, right, you see easy pins, right? You've got stuff in bowls, you've got front pin locations on par 5s, and that's not what we got, right? But also at the same time, and we're going to go through pins here in a few minutes, actually. You'll see that they're not super hard, right? They're not tough. There's a lot of like center pin locations. There's not a ton of back pin locations either. So it's not like a Sunday setup, right? Where it looks like they're going to purposely make it hard, but it's also not looking like a moving day setup. So I think it's pretty neutral. I would say in general, yeah, right. They can make it harder now that the amateurs aren't there, but I don't see that as much, right? Just going through the setup, right? Going hole by hole, which we're going to do here on stream. Thoughts on Matsuyama? I think he's an okay play, but he's playing horribly, right? So the time and place to use him is if you need to get different, right? In a large field GPP lineup, if you need to take a stand on somebody that has upside, but also a really low floor, makes quite a bit of sense. So I've got him at 3.4%, which is one of the lowest owned players, 7K up, right? He's really low owned, and comparatively is like 3-4 times lower owned than the guys around him. Yeah, like there's a time and place for using Hideki Matsuyama. Now, would it be in like a high dollar single entry contest that I'm entering? Absolutely not, right? I would not want to put my money behind somebody that's volatile like Hideki that kind of hasn't had his best stuff for a while. But 3.4% in a large field GPP is appetizing, right? It's worth some attention in that kind of format. Let's see. You and Thomas, horrible putting. Griot, great putting, but horrible elsewhere. Thoughts on those 3? So I would say with Griot, I don't know if I'd feel like all that stoked about that, right? Like normally he's a ball striker that loses with the putter. The gaining with the putter is really what takes him to a spike round, but he didn't even have his approach. So yeah, I would probably not go after that. Strokes lines are low. On Underdog for sure. Yeah, I'd say on Prize Picks they opened a little bit higher, but they got bumped down. Yo, what's going on? Os the Boss, waking up. Hopefully you're enjoying a coffee out there. You missed the weather point. Rain most of the day. It looks like an intermittent portion of rain towards the middle of the day. I think it was like an hour of rain, only like 0.01 inches. So not very much. But the big part of rain is coming at the end of the day. So like 4 p.m., there's a big block of storms coming through. They moved up tee times to try and avoid that. So it's going to be close on whether the end of play ends up getting hit by those showers, but they moved up tee times to do their best with it. One more opinion. What is my take on Wyndham Clark? I like him. I'm like lukewarm on him. I'd say I'm like a 6.5 out of 10 on somebody like a Wyndham Clark today. I like how he played yesterday. That's for sure. I took him for props. I took him for an under on par 5 strokes, which we should have taken him here on stream. So right last night, we were trying to decide on whether to take Wyndham Clark or Ricky Fowler for par 5 strokes. Now, both should have hit. The scoring average was 2 under par in the par 5s. Both should have hit. Wyndham Clark did so easily. Went out there and I think birdied 3, maybe even all 4 of the par 5s out there. Ricky Fowler had less than 6 feet for birdie on all 4 par 5s, and he made one of the putts out of all 4 of them. And those are, of course, 6-foot putts are about like 65, 70%ers on the PGA Tour, and he managed to only make one of them there with Ricky Fowler. So, yeah, that was some bad juju on our stream slip. That was bad of a run out as we possibly could have had when it came to Ricky Fowler's putting. But yeah, Wyndham Clark, no such issues. Went out there, absolutely smashed. I could see it. Yeah, and look at the ownership, right? I've got him at 7.5%. That's not outrageous whatsoever. Any Pavon magic. I cannot get the guy right. I will say that I'm not as long-term sold on him as maybe other people are. So I'll leave it there. Probably not. Not for me, at least, right? Of course, I got you, Stenio. Of course, Tom, great content. Appreciate you. How underwhelming has Homa been? Goodness, absolutely. It's kind of annoying, right? He's gone out there. He's had two just like average days. I wouldn't give up on him, though. His ball striking, all those advanced metrics, they're saying that something big's coming soon. So I'm going to be a rider for quite some time if he keeps hitting the ball like he is. Thoughts on Yu and Kitayama? Kevin Yu, I know he putted horribly yesterday, right? We had somebody in chat mention that. He has a good course history here. He's played well of late, right? In terms of shots gained metrics, you can see this recent form rank. It includes obviously some of the past stats that weren't as good. But if you just look at the last two events for Kevin Yu, the guy's playing, like I said, some of the best golf in the entire field. So at $7,200, I could certainly see him bouncing back. I think Kitayama, I don't really have a take on Kitayama. I'd say that he's a decent showdown player. Aggressive. You know he's going to go after pins there at -1. I think he's an okay play, but I don't really have a take there on him, right? Thoughts on Todd today? I like the putter with Brendan Todd, right? Another player that started hot out there on Thursday and then now has completely simmered down to a -1 score. Has a really good track record around Pebble Beach, fits the golf course well. A lot of his low rounds came at Pebble. At past events over here at this event, especially when it was a 3-course rotation, right? Only had 2 goes at it, but yet again, just time and time again was popping on Pebble Beach. I like it. 4.4%. I could see him going out there and having a decent day. Works for me, that's for sure. All right, let's talk some props now. So if you have any DFS questions, you can still go ahead and throw them down in chat. I'll get to them when I can, but we're going to focus on the prop side here. So let me go ahead and bring up this tee sheet. Pin locations, and we're going to do a deep dive into these here. So let me bring up the PGA Tour sites. Hopefully don't unplug my mic, because if we do, we're going to have to fix that. All right, so we got PGA up. And we're going to do a deep dive and show you guys what I think about the pins and how I think the course is going to play, and then some underdog and prize pick stuff we can go through. And we're going to talk some live golf too. Live looks a little bit windier than what they had for round 1. I did not watch the live golf because I was out on the golf course on the outing I was talking about, right? I didn't see the PGA stuff, but I did watch the encore coverage last night, which is clutch that Golf Channel does that. Obviously, if you don't see it live, right, it's good to be able to watch it back. I could have just streamed it, but was easier to have it on the big TV. But yeah, live golf, we're going to go off the data from yesterday. I had a few people in my Discord that watched it that I picked their brains on what they thought about the coverage. They said that the rough looked a little longer this year. But the fairways on a few holes were a little bit tighter, but Joaquin Neiman shot 59, right? So like how difficult could it possibly have been if he shot a 59? Let's see. Did Scotty finally find his putting game, I should say? Probably not. It was probably just a good day, right? But you never know. You never know, right? Maybe he found the pot of gold, but probably not. All right, let's go through these pins. So hole number 1's a middle pin. And just before we go hole by hole, I'm going to show you guys what I mean by like, it's not hard pins, but they're also not easy pins, right? So like hole 1 is a center pin location. Like by all metrics, that's going to be one of the easier pins that you can have. The added little caveat here, though, is that all the slope on the screen goes from left to right. So any miss to the left of this pin location is going to feed to right about where this pin is. So not only is it a center pin location, which is pretty safe from the bunkers around and some of the rough around the screen, but if you miss left, so if you hit a draw in there, right, and you try and draw it to this pin location, you overcook it a little bit, it's going to come off that slope and get really close to the hole. So hole number 1 looks a little bit like a moving day pin. Hole 2, look at this, right? 6 paces off the left, right? That's a lot more than what we're used to seeing, right? Normally they're 3-4 paces off the side, and it's like in the middle of this plateau. So like that certainly doesn't look like a hard pin location, but it's also not one of these front pins where it's going to play a lot shorter, right? Like sometimes we see out there in moving day. Hole 3 is a back right pin location. This is actually, and let's go hole by hole so I can show you the hole distances. So let's get this to hole 1. Hole 1's like a medium length par 4. Usually people lay up off the tee, so you're hitting like a 9-iron in. This is that slope I was talking about, right? You see the slope to the left side of the green. It'll push your shot a little bit closer to the pin, which is about yonder where I've got my cursor right there. Hole number 2, just to go over that one. Right, 2 was the one that's 6 off the left, about 20 paces on. This is a par 5, so you're going to have room to hit it into the green and let it roll out a little bit. You've got a little backstop to the left, and where I think the proper misses and where you're going to see a lot of people hitting their second shots on this hole is in this bunker, right? So you can see Thomas Dietrich, right, got it up and down out of this bunker for round 2, right? And so good for him making a birdie there. You're going to see a lot of people hitting it in this bunker. And people were in between clubs to this front pin location. You saw a lot of them trying to hit a 3-wood and then carving it up there to try and get a little bit less distance on it. And then you saw guys trying to get a driving iron there. So it feels like if it's like 15, 20 yards longer, that everyone's going to have to hit a 3-wood, and, maybe you have to take a little bit off it if you're a longer player. But if you're doing that, you're going to hit it in this right bunker a whole lot, right? If you're taking a little bit off your driver. And the up and down from over here, which is again to this like middle back pin location, right, is not that difficult, right? You have all this green to work with. There's no slope at that part of the green. I think the birdie percentage at hole 2, though it's a longer hole, I don't think it changes very much because it's only like a 500-yard par 5. Hole 3 is that back right pin. So this is another shorter par 4. You're going to be hitting a wedge in here anyways. It was already in the back left for rounds 1 and 2, and now it's in the back right. So I would say little to no change in the scoring average. So we've got a few easier pins and then a few neutrals so far. Hole number 4 is a front right pin location, I should say. Shorter par 4. What am I saying? Come on, get some coffee in you. There we go. So it's going to play shorter, perhaps even closer to like 315 yards. So you might see people try and go for this green, like try and get it up there near the front of it, maybe in one of these greenside bunkers. But if you lay back, it's going to be an even easier wedge shot. Hole number 5 is a back pin location. So this is a longer par 3. It's going to play like 200 yards out here for round number 3. And I'd say it's the hardest pin location on this green. So this is one of the few pin locations that I think is going to play harder. Hole 6 is 100% going to play more difficult. This is a par 5. It's reachable in 2, so I still think you're going to see a scoring average well under par, but it's back here in this back left, right? And Thomas Dietrich, his shot for yesterday would have actually been pretty perfect to that back left pin location, but it's tucked a little bit further back there, right? Adds a little bit of distance to the hole and puts it closer to this bunker over here, and it's a long bunker shot from this bunker over here on the right side. So I would say you're going to see a slightly lower birdie average at hole number 6, but this is going to be one of the few pins that's actually harder. Hole number 7 is a front pin. It's going to play sub 100 yards. And you can see there's a little bit of a bull there. If you miss left or right, that one is going to be absolute cake. Hole number 8 is a back right pin location. It's going to play to a similar distance and a similar spot to what you had there in rounds 1 and 2. So little to no change there. Hole number 9. And the reason why they have to use a lot of similar pins is because of the greens are so small and they have so much slope to them. There's only so many pins they can actually use. Next up, we've got hole number 9, which is a par 5. Actually, not a par 5, long par 4, I should say. And it's tucked just over this bunker. So this pin location is devious. On a 500-yard par 4, you're probably just looking to make a par there. The only thing I can think of here is there's a chance they move up the tee box. So let me show you guys hole number 10. Before we do that, right, if they move up the tee box, they'd probably move it up like 1, maybe 2 tee boxes. And if they do that, you would shorten up this hole and you would make this pin location, which again, look at this, hole number 9, right? It's 9 paces on. So you do have some room to work with over there, but it's tucked like right here, right over the bunker. With a long iron, it'd be extremely difficult to get it close. But if they move up the tee box at 9, it would make it like a mid iron, maybe even a wedge in. Then it would make a lot more sense. And I think it would be play pretty easy, right? If that ended up happening. So keep an eye on that. I don't think they're going to do it, but if they did, that would be huge for scoring. It would lower scores quite a bit if they moved up that tee box. Hole number 10 had the tee box moved up. So you can see there's a tee box the whole way back here where a lot of times they play this hole. For whatever reason, they played it from this tee box. So you'll have to see if they do the same thing again. They have a lot of the build out on Shot Tracker over here at this tee box, which makes me think they might do it again. Maybe that's just the tee box that they're using for this event. But keep an eye on that, right? It's a shorter hole. If it only plays 440, it's not nearly as much of a brute as what you have most years, because this hole can play upwards of 500 yards. And you can see he made about a 3-foot birdie over there. Hole 10, and actually, let's look at the pin location, right? So hole 10 is like a middle right pin location. It's tucked a little bit closer to this bunker. Let's go to the green side view. It's like in this area where I have my cursor in the top right. It's not terrible, but you could miss to the right of this bunker, which would be a little bit of a tough up and down. See, hole 11. Let's go through this back nine a little bit quicker. 6 paces off the left, 10 paces on. This is a short par 4. It's going to play even shorter for round 3, and it's pretty much wide open. So I would say an easier pin location. Hole number 12 is middle left, 7 paces off the left, about 14 paces on. So it's like in the middle of this left little peninsula that you have on this island green. I would say since it's a long iron shot, right, it's always going to be a little bit harder than some of your other par 3s, but the pin location is not why it's harder. It's just a tough hole to begin with. Small green and a long iron shot. Hole 13 is a back right pin. So this is another hole that's going to play a little bit longer, but you can see it was already in the back, right? So the distance is nearly identical over here on the right side, maybe a yard or two longer. And you do have this little backstop in the middle of the green that could help you if you pull and tug a shot over there. So I think in general, just kind of comparable to what you had days 1 and 2. Hole 14 is a middle left pin location. So this is the, par 5 that's tucked over the bunker that I was thinking about before, right? When we were on the hole number 9, which was the long par 4. It's a similar kind of setup, right? They're not going to move up the tee box at the par 5 by any means. But getting up and down out of this bunker looks simple, but it's actually a little bit more challenging than you would expect. And the up and down from over in this bunker would be nearly impossible, as you'd have to carry this bunker shot over this ledge and then try and get it to stop. So I think that hole 14 is going to play like a little harder than you had the first few days. It's like I said, one of the handful of pins that I think is more difficult, but there's also a bunch that are easier. Hole number 15 is a middle right. It's a hole 8 paces off the right, so it's almost in the middle of this green, and it's a short par 4, right? So you're going to be hitting a wedge in there. You have a little backstop to work off of. I think you're going to see a lot of birdies at 15. Hole 16 is a back left pin location. It's another shorter par 4. I would say very comparable to rounds 1 and 2, right? Rounds 1 and 2 was tucked over here on the right side. Now it's kind of tucked towards the left. So I would say no change in terms of your scoring. 17 is another one of the slightly harder holes. 17 is in this left bulb. That's really the only reason I would say it would be more difficult. So you can see on this graphic, right, it's over here on this left bulb, 7 paces off the left. So it's not tucked near a bunker by any means, right? US Opens, they tuck it like just over the bunker over here. They tuck it in this back corner right near these bunkers. So it's just a tough shot because it's into the wind, right? Directly into the prevailing wind there at Pebble Beach. And it's a long shot, right? It's like 170 yards. That's most of the difficulty there. And then finally, hole 18 is a back middle pin location, which is going to play slightly longer than what you had for days 1 and 2, but it's the same kind of prospect to get up and down. The wind this week is really helping players get it closer and further off the tee. They're not really having to worry about that tree off the tee, which is huge for trying to get home in 2, which is getting a lot of people in these greenside bunkers. You've had people reach the green in 2, a few eagles, right? A lot of 2 putts for birdie. But this back pin location over here in like the back middle is probably as simple as this pin location for getting up and down. If you miss in one of these left bunkers, it's going to be even more simple, right, to try and get it closer to the pin. And if you miss in one of these right bunkers, it's the same kind of thing, right? They're all about the same distance, right? This bunker shot from where Thomas Dietrich was would probably be the most difficult because it's the longest, right, to that back pin location. But if you miss in one of these 3 bunkers, it's probably like a 70% type of up and down. So I would expect to see a lot of birdies at 18. We'll play slightly longer, so probably less eagles than what you had for days 1 and 2. And there weren't even a ton of eagles to begin with, but you're going to have a little bit less, I think, than what you had then. But still plenty of birdies out there for 18. And if you're just joining us, if we're going to take a look at the weather too, let me go ahead and refresh this. Let's see what it looks like up to date over there at Pebble Beach. Let's put our marker right on the golf course too, right? Is that it right there? Yeah, here's Pebble Beach over here. There we go. HRRR's up. So you can see winds are pretty low, right? Sub 6, 8 miles an hour for the entire day. They should be finishing about 3 p.m. local time. They're going off at 8 a.m. local time. And you can see pretty much not a breath of wind out there. We just went through the pin locations. I think they're pretty neutral. I think you have some harder pins. I think you have some easier pin locations. And that's what they're going to try and go with. So in terms of weather, I think it's going to be comparable to what we had yesterday. Pin locations, I think, are pretty comparable as well. So when we look at the scoring average over here at Pebble Beach, right, because there's no spyglass, over there from rounds 3 and 4. At Pebble Beach, it played minus 2.6. Now, one thing to consider, right, is that the field strength over here at Spyglass was not as good as we had round 1, right? You can see they played about minus 1.18 yesterday, and round 1, Spyglass played minus 1.7 under par. So I do think there's a little bit of a talent gap difference, and now that the fields are going to combine, right, on the same course, I think you're going to see the scoring average maybe get a little bit worse than this 2.6 under par, but I would imagine it plays at least 2 under. I would say at worst, you're going to see like a 70 scoring average out there, if not closer to the 69.5 number that we had for round 2. So that's what I would expect to see. I don't think the pins give us much reason to think differently, and I don't think that the wind conditions especially would give us any reason to think differently. So I know we had the question about the setup before. I would normally be a little bit worried about that, but yeah, doing our due diligence, it doesn't look like they're leaning into that all that much. So there's going to be some unders on strokes, some overs on birdies that I'm considering. And let me bring up Draftkings and FanDuel actually, so we can do some line shopping here in stream. We're going to go through Underdog first, then we're going to go through Prize Picks real quick, and then we'll talk some Live Golf. I love having Live Golf around, but last time we were on stream, I just forgot to talk about it. So I know I mentioned I was going to do that last time, and then I completely forgot. So my apologies there. DraftKings golf odds. Come on. All right. All right. So a lot of the props that I like over here, let me bring up these round scores real quick. Same thing on FanDuel. There we go. All right, let's hop into this board. So there have been some bumps to this point, but not enough. There's still a lot of props that I like here. So I'm going to go ahead and throw a few of my favorites into the shopping cart, and we'll talk them up here. So let's put Tony Finau in there, who I definitely like here. Yeah, a lot of guys I see here that I took that got bumped, so I'm not even going to mention them at this point. You guys don't care about props I took that got bumped. Let's see, what else do we got? Yeah, they bumped Homa. Okay, that was about time on that one. I had Homa at 4.5. It makes sense that he would have got bumped to 5. He should have been bumped quite a long time ago, in my opinion. And they still have Xander at 4.5. Okay, let's throw that into the shopping cart for right now. Any other ones? All right, we'll leave it with these 3. So I wouldn't enter this as a slip just because you're only going to get 4.82x payout. If anything, you're going to want to pick your favorite 2 out of these, right? So I'm going to go through my reasoning with all 3, whichever 2 you agree with the most. Probably the 2 that you can consider tailing, right? You don't have to tail anything if you don't want to, right? If you think all 3 of the explanations are bullshit, then don't play them, right? I don't enter things for you. Just try to give you advice and, what I'm doing. And you can do with that information what you'd like, right? If you think it's terrible advice, take the opposite, right? That's totally fine. I'm not going to tell you what to do. But I like Jordan Spieth because the birdie average yesterday was about 4.5 per round. In round 1, when we had the slightly harder conditions on Pebble Beach, it played to about a 4 birdie average. So with similar conditions to round 2, I'm forecasted here for today, right? I'm expecting to see about a 4.5 birdie average. And for somebody like Jordan Spieth, that is well above average in terms of making birdies in this field, and also loves Pebble Beach, right? Is an elite tier course history out there around Pebble, would be a pretty solid lean over 4.5 birdies. Tony Finau, this is where the line shopping is going to come in real handy here. So Tony Finau, right? Minus 145 for the under, right? A lot of juice there. And on top of that, it's just an elite tier player projected at yesterday's field average. Now, I think it might play closer to 2 under par out here for round 3. But for Tony Finau to have to gain a stroke to the field to go out there and cover is not asking him all that much. In fact, if you take a look at his shots gained distribution, he goes out there and gains a stroke to the field in about 55% of rounds. So that is something we can rely on. But on top of that, if it plays the minus 2.5 under par, right, maybe it does play, as easy as it did for round 2. Maybe even plays easier. Who knows, right? Maybe that talent gap thing is a hogwash, right? Wasn't even a factor. If that happens, it's an even better prop, right? So definitely a lot of value there too. In the sports books, agree. Let's find them over here on FanDuel. Let's see, there he is. Also minus 140, right? Pretty pretty solid juice in his favor there. And then lastly, you've got Xander Schauffele. He's at 5 birdies over here on Prize Picks, I should say. They don't have Jordan Spieth up, but he would most likely be at 5 birdies, like a lot of the other players they have up here. But you can see, right, that 0.5 discrepancy compared to Underdog. So if I was going to like lean to here, I would probably say the birdie props. The only reason I say that is you do have some pin locations that are more difficult, right? Like that one par 3 is going to be hard. That, 9 looks like an absolutely hellhole of a hole. It looks like you're going to make a lot of bogeys at hole number 9. So if you can avoid all of that bogey variance, I don't think it's the worst idea, right? But I guess the issue with Xander is that he's playing the worst golf out of anyone there. It's not like Tony Finau is playing that good of golf either, but I think they're all decent plays. If you only want to take discrepancies, right, you could take Xander and then match him up with this Tony Finau prop. Reason I say that, I'll show you guys over here, right, is we already know that Xander's up at 5 birdies over there in Prize Picks, but Tony Finau is also already down at 69 strokes. So he's already seen the bump down in that direction. Where you at, Big Tone? Am I blind? He was on the board. He's definitely on the board, right? Unless they took him off the board. I mean, maybe they did. The more likely answer is that I'm blind, but I don't see him on here anymore. Did they really take my boy Tony down? They did. Look at that. Okay, so it's a good thing I looked this up. I'm not blind, apparently, or at least not as blind as I think. They still have him up at 4.5 birdies, but they took down his strokes prop. He was at 69 strokes before they took it down, but I don't quite understand why they took him down. That's interesting. But yeah, if you wanted to go with this, that would make a lot of sense too, because it was a 0.5 discrepancy over there on Prize Picks. So that's it for Underdog. There were some unders on par 5 strokes that I took. So kind of like what we had rounds 1 and 2, the pin locations on the par 5s, a few of them look like marginally more difficult, but it played to a -2 average, right? So you have a lot of guys on here at 18.5 par 5 strokes. I don't want to say like blindly tail them, right? Because you want to find the guys that are the best on par 5s. But for example, like a Wyndham Clark is a top 10 par 5 player in tour, right? Like he made a lot of sense at 18.5. Somebody like a Tom Kim was another player that made a lot of sense at 18.5. He got bumped down to 18. So unfortunately, that's something that you guys can't tail right now because of all the action that came in on it. But if you can find similar elite level players on the par 5s, that would be worth a look for today. Even at 18 strokes, like I would be, leaning towards the under on some of your elite tier players. But the guys at 18.5 are really where a lot of the value is over there on that side. Which, speaking of, I kind of want to add another one of the slips for par 5s. So maybe we can find one together. I was going to say, right, just like look through the stats, look at some of the top par 5 players, and you could figure it out. But we can figure it out together. How's that sound? So let me bring up the PGA Tour stats page, bring up the par 5 scoring. I don't track par 5 scoring in my database, or else I would just bring it up there and bring it to the side. But let's just bring up the PGA Tour site and do this together. Why not? Par 5 scoring average. Here, I'll share my screen so you don't have to stare at my face the whole time here. All right, so here we go. Par 5 scoring average. Let's go to last season, right? We don't care about the first 2 events. All right. So they're all playing Pebble Beach, so no need to worry about what golf course is what. Let's see, any prop questions? Looks like we're good. Actually, one prop question. What do you think about the specials on Prize Picks with Rahm and Scheffler? There's a special. What kind of special? You mean over here? Oh, I didn't see those. So you're going between like Live Golf and PGA? Didn't even notice those. Well, let me think. Brooks is at 4.5, right? They have Rory at 5 birdies, so that adds up right there. They've got John Rahm and Scheffler at 10.5. Those feel like pretty adequate projections. I'd say, I feel like they did a pretty good job with them, right? They just added their projections. If anything, yeah, I think they're fair. I was going to say, if anything, I would lean under on the John Rahm one, but I wouldn't, right? You're talking about John Rahm and Scotty Scheffler. It's hard to want to fade them, right? One of them can go for 7 birdies and then just make it super easy for the other one to get there. So, yeah, I would probably stay away. Maybe, if anything, even lean over, right? Because I've convinced myself now that I think about it, right? With those elite tier kind of players, yeah, you'd probably lean over, if anything, right? Who should you take for understrokes, Tom Kim or Sahith? Not sure, to be honest. I would probably lean Tom Kim just because he's a little bit of a straighter driver, but the projections aren't the same, right? So that's the issue. So in a vacuum, I would say Tom Kim. Let's see, he's at 69.5 actually. In Sahith is too, right? Yeah, Tom Kim. I thought there was a 0.5 discrepancy. I thought Tom Kim might have been at 69 strokes. But yeah, 69.5. I would totally take that. Xander sold you for $1,500. You hate him. Hey, dude, if you're betting too much on a player and it's making you hate them out there for missing a prop, probably betting too much. I'm not going to lecture you out there about that, but that's probably the case, right? Probably should scale it back if that's the case. Thoughts on Nikolai Hogard? I think he's a decent play today, right? -5, in position to move up the leaderboard, but also has to be aggressive to accomplish that. So for DFS, I've got him at 10% ownership. Totally fine getting over the field on that. And $8,000, fair price tag, right? I think you're paying for some of the hype over the last week or so, but he's backed it up. And on the European tour was maybe the most consistent player over there. I mean, he had a few wins. He wasn't a prolific winner over there on the DP World Tour. What he did do is finish top 25 like almost every single week. So yeah, I like Hogard long term, and I like him there. Thoughts on Ricky under bogeys? Is he at 2.5? If he's at 2.5, I could see it because the bogey average yesterday at Pebble specifically, right, was 1.88 per round. So was a lot lower than what you had for round one. Round one, it was 2.89. So it dropped an entire bogey from rounds 1 to round 2, which is not typical. Let's see. So yeah, they have him at 2.5. The issue with Ricky Fowler, right? And we're going to go through some par 5 stuff here in a second. So I don't want to bring up the bogey board, but the issue with Ricky, right, is that he's a little bit volatile, right? He'll make some bogeys, right? He'll hit some shitty tee shots. I would try and find someone else at 2.5, Michael, but I really like the way that you're thinking, right? The bogey average was lower. There are going to be some guys at 2.5 that are values for the under. I just would probably try and find somebody that's better off the tee. That would be my advice. Ricky Fowler's playing great golf, though. If you want to tail that, totally understand it. What we want to go through here is I want to go through some of the par 5 stuff. So in terms of our top par 5 scorers, Ludwig, Cantlay, Rahm obviously went to Live, which we're going to talk about Live here in a second. It's a good thing we saw that. It's going to remind me to do that. But in terms of our top 5 par 5 scores, a lot of them are already down to 18, right? Like I took Wyndham for a reason. I took Sanjay days 1 and 2 for a reason, right? He's up there number 5 in the world. I think the first guy at 18.5 that comes up, let's see, is Matt Fitzpatrick at 18.5? Because he would probably be the first one. So he's at 18, right? So he's even bumped down to 18 at this point. Let's find one that hasn't been bumped. So Cam Young, I know, is at 18. Let's see. Is Ricky Fowler still up there? Because I know he screwed us yesterday. I know he kicked me in the absolute nutsack in terms of missing 3 putts less than 6 feet for birdie. But he set up all those birdie looks, and he's playing the same golf course, right? Maybe different pin locations will have better juju on the greens. So he's the first one that pops up. Now, I don't know if I'm going to actually take him because I kind of still want to hold a grudge against him for what he did yesterday, but he's at least on the list. Rory's down at 18. Eric Cole shows up. That's kind of surprising, honestly, given the fact that he's not that good off the tee. But you do have some par 5s here that aren't off the tee heavy. So let's see where they have Eric Cole. He might be down at 18. He's not. He's actually there at 18.5. So can you consider taking him there? Let's see who else we've got. Wrong tab, my bad. Let's see. We've got Tommy Fleetwood, who might be at 18.5. Brian Harman, kind of surprising right there. And then Hogard. So let's look at Harman and Hogard first. Harman's at 18.5. You could take, again, it's a course with shorter par 5, so you might be able to make it work. So Hogard's at 18. And then who was the other one? It was what? Fleetwood. I have a feeling Fleetwood's at 18 too. In fact, he's also 18. So this is our short list right now, right? And we keep going, right? Keep trying to find better names to add to the list. But we've already got our premier options on there. So we should probably choose from those 3. If you were going to add another one to the list, it would be Poston and maybe Justin Rose. They're at tied for 41st. So let's see that. What? Poston's at 18 already. What do they have Rose at? Rose is at 18.5. So this would have to be our top 4. And the reason why I want to take these unders, just to show you guys. So in round 2, so this was yesterday, right, with a 2.5 under par scoring average. Hole number 2, par 5, played 0.85 under. That is ridiculous. Hole 6 played 0.55 under par, right? That is a whole 1.4 under par for just 2 holes. Your next par 5 played 0.25 under, right? So that's a 1.65 under par scoring average. And then your last one played 0.35 under to give us exactly a 2 under par scoring average. So first off, great that the math was that easy to do, right? Get us exactly to 2 under par. But to have the field average be at 2, and then to have guys up here that are all the top half of the field in terms of par 5 scoring is a mistake, right? And now the pin locations, I think, are slightly harder out here for round 3 on the par 5 specifically as compared to rounds 1 and 2. But I think it'll make at most a half stroke difference, right? So if that were to happen, it would put it at right around 18.5 average. And then yet you'd still want to take the unders here because they're all better than average of the field at par 5. So I'm very close to wanting to enter this. And I guess we just have to figure out the 2 we'd want to go with, right? Then I'd probably feel a lot better about wanting to enter this. But yeah, like I said, at worst, you're going to get an average of about 18.5. So if you're going to take anyone here, Eric Cole's a really good putter. Let me see how he putt on Pebble Beach specifically. I think it was round 1 that he was playing Pebble. So we'll look at his round 1 putting stats. He had a ton of birdies yesterday, but he also only shot -1 because of all this bogey production. I mean, look at this. He went bogey, double over there from 3 through 6. Like, come on, Eric. You can't be doing that shit. Let's look at this. So he only gained 0.4 strokes putting, but did it all with the ball striking. You know, gained a stroke with the irons. Good shit. And what did he do yesterday? 13 greens, 11 fairways is impressive for Eric Cole. 11 fairways, yet he still managed to make all those bogeys and doubles. Come on, Eric. I like how he's hitting the ball, though. So I feel like Eric's probably at the top of my list. And then Ricky, right? He's playing pretty well himself. The issue for Ricky is that he can't make anything, and I mean anything, on these POA greens. So if you take a look at his stats from yesterday, he shot -1, which was not a horrible round. He ended up losing strokes to the field, though, right? Because he was playing Pebble Beach. He gained in all 3 tee to green categories and lost 2.8 strokes putting. I mean, that's as bad as it gets, right? You're not going to have days like that very often. Just to show you guys how tilting it was yesterday. Hole number 2, he missed from 5.5 feet. He did birdie 6. How long was the birdie at 6? It was 12 feet, right? So the longest birdie that he's going to make all day on the par 5s was a 12-footer, right? Out here with 14, he missed a 5-foot 7-inch putt. And then finally, over here in 18, he missed a 6-foot 3-inch putt out there for birdie. He makes any of those, and we cover our prop yesterday. So I feel like I want to take him out of here just because of that, but that would be acting emotional, right? I mean, it happens, right? Guys are going to miss putts. I probably shouldn't act like a little butthurt bitch about it, right? That's probably not the best way to go about it. Let's see. Brian Harmon. Yeah, Droz. Let's go with these top 2. Let's just go with my initial leans out there and enter that first slip. So 2 unders. We're going back to Ricky. If he ends up burning us again, so be it. The numbers, the metrics, how he's been playing, right, indicate that he's a good play at that number. I want guys that are ball striking it well, right? I want guys that are good around the green, right, to try and get up and down on those par 5s. And they check those boxes I'm looking for. So that'll be another slip that we're going with on top of those 3 props we went over before. In terms of prize picks, everything I've took has gotten bumped over here. So yeah, not much of a take there. We're going to focus more on prize picks when we go over the live golf side. So let's go ahead and do that now. So if you're here for PGA stuff, I appreciate you guys. Thank you guys for stopping by. Smash that like button if you have. But now we're going to talk about some live golf. So quickly going to go through what to expect out there at Mayakoba, and specifically going to focus on the prop side of things. A few spots that I think you might want to add in. And fingers crossed, but I don't think there's been any bumps. So there's going to be a lot to go over here with live. So let me go ahead and bring up Mayakoba first. I've just been doing the weather by the city of Mayakoba. If we go ahead and put it on El Camaleon, right, it's right next to where they have this marker. You can see that they have it pretty windy today. It's a little bit blustery right now. This is the ECM model, which is notorious for maybe over-exaggerating a little bit, but they've got 30-mile-an-hour wind gusts. Over here for the GFS model, not nearly as windy, right? Icon, a little bit windier, right? 25-mile-an-hour wind gusts. And then this Medio Blue model, which I think is probably the most accurate, has it about 20 to 22-mile-an-hour wind gusts. So compared to what we had on Friday, where it was really calm out there in the El Camaleon, it looks like you're going to have those normal tropical breezes. The normal tropical breezes, I should say, right? Like there's normal gusts that you get at the beach, right? You know, everyone's kind of used to that, right? Especially if you're down here from the south. And I think it's to make the course play slightly more difficult, right? It played a little bit under par yesterday, but I could see it playing to a similar average. Live Golf, a lot of times they use easy pin locations. They'll make greens soft. They'll run them a little bit slower than what you have on the PGA Tour. And it makes sense why, right? People want to see scoring. People like seeing things like a Joaquin Niemann shooting a 59. So it wouldn't surprise me just because Liv's a little bit of a ticky-tack kind of league for even in higher wins for it to play slightly easier. Now, most scenarios, it's going to play a little bit harder, right, than what we had in round one. But I put that disclaimer out there because of the track record we've seen with Liv, right? They want to see birdies, they want to see explosive scoring. So a lot of times when you have these windy predictions, these forecasts that don't look all that great, they account for that and they change the course setup. So we'll have to see. There's no way to know ahead of time. They don't put out pin sheets for Live Golf. They also don't give us things like the setup, ahead of time, kind of like the PGA Tour. So we're kind of in the dark on that one. But props I like. So a few here that are going to make some sense. Let's see. Any questions in chat before we do that? Let's see. It's right. We already went over that. Cool. Is Monterey that easy compared to Spyglass? Less bogeys and more birdies, etc., etc. Monterey Peninsula, yeah, they're not playing that one this year, but it normally is. Yeah, it normally is about the easiest. Thoughts on Kevin Yu? I think he's an okay play. I touched on him actually a few times already, Anthony. So if you scroll back, you'll probably be able to find that. But I think he's an okay play. I like the fact that he has played well at Pebble in the past. I like the fact that he's played well the last few weeks. So I think he's a decent spot. Do I like Tommy under at 69.5? I would lean under on it. I think the only thing that held me back from it was his odds, which last night, right, could have changed this morning. Were not that favorable. Oh, do they not have him up on Draftkings anymore? That's unfortunate. Pretty sure they have him up on FanDuel, so let's check over here. They do. He's actually down at 68.5. Yeah, I'd be okay with it. It looks like the sports books are starting to change up a little bit, which we're not on PGA right now, or else I'd go through this. After I get off stream, I'll have to take a look. It looks like with the calmer conditions, you're starting to see them adjust a few lines, which is probably a good thing. It's a good thing for our value, right? We took a lot of unders. We took a lot of overs on birdies, for example, and it kind of looks like they're adjusting for that. Let's see. Let's hop over here. Other questions. Anything you go through on scam picks that you missed? Nah. I'm not. Everything I took already got bumped. So no, we're not going to be doing anything for PGA at least. Thoughts of Adam Scott under 70 strokes on Prize Picks? 70 strokes is, I would say, good push equity over there. He probably has a little bit less under equity than the other guys at 69.5, though. So if you're looking for somebody to be a little bit of a safer under out there for PGA, he gives you that with this push, but the push rolls on Prize Picks aren't great, right? Like you get a 1.5x payout. Actually, I think it's like 1.25x now for a two-legger if you go out there and push one and hit one. So that's the one thing about Prize Picks I'll say is with their push rolls, and especially with like the new payouts that they're doing when you get pushes, it's kind of BS. Like it takes away a lot of that utility that we used to have there and has me taking more of these like 69.5s. So an Underdog, I'm still all about the pushes, right? Underdogs are an automatic void over there, which is a huge, actually really good for your ROI if you have pushes be a complete void. But over here at 69.5, like I'd rather take these on Prize Picks and not have to deal with those push rolls, right? Like it's just, I hate how they do it. It's annoying, especially compared to Underdog. Curious if you have noticed Underdog bumping strokes and birdies, but leaving the fantasy the same. Yeah, they do. It's because people don't like betting fantasy. And when they bump stuff, by the way, it's not because of their projections changing. It's not because of them, changing their stance. It's a trading team looking at action coming in and just moving numbers, right? So it's not even the lines maker that's doing that. It's a team of people that are just sitting on computers, right? Getting flags of, oh, $10,000 have been put on this one side of a prop versus like $300, right? Placed on the other side of this single prop. Let's move it 0.5 in that direction. That's all that's happening there, right? So the reason why fantasy isn't moving is it's hard to calculate the projections for it. So people out there naturally flock to birdies, bogeys, all that sort of fun stuff. If you didn't want to do your own projections and you maybe wanted to like tail the community steam out there, you could use that to your advantage. But the safer thing to do is to calculate it out, right? And figure out if any of those are edges. That's the reason for that, though, is it's not the lines makers moving things. It's not them moving it because they're expecting different conditions. It's the trading team moving them because of action, which might not even be the right move, right? They bump things in the wrong direction all the time just because of people touting picks and whatnot, which is becoming more common for golf, by the way. A lot of wannabe cappers on Twitter. Let's say that. Kevin Yu versus Taylor Moore in a head-to-head. I would take Kevin Yu. Yeah. Kevin Yu's playing better, has a good track record here. I like him. Good morning. Good luck today. Good luck to you, G2. Best of luck out there. Half the time, Prize Picks will just refund the entry instead of giving the 1.5x. Yeah. It's, like I said, it's annoying, right? Like, so I just don't like dealing with it. And normally, like, if I like a guy at 70 and I like a guy too at 69.5, a lot of times I just side with the guy at 69.5 because of how annoying that can be. Officially announced preferred lies. That is music to my ears. Let's go. Really? Did they? Let's go. That's sick. Okay. That helps us out anymore. I honestly wasn't counting on that. I didn't think it was going to be preferred lies. I thought there was a chance because they're going off early. They kind of know they're going to avoid most of that rain, that they were just going to like, okay, we're going to play the ball down for once. But nope. Preferred lies, even lower scoring average than what we thought before, which is probably why you're going to see some steam over there in the sports books here soon. So, yeah, after we get off stream, I'm probably going to add some slips over on the PGA side because that opens up a lot of value for unders on bogeys specifically. I think that's a huge edge now. But if you're gonna see that PGA stuff, right? We've already gone over a few slips on that side. That's going to be on Patreon. That's going to be behind the paywall for that stuff. But again, we've gone over plenty here. 2 slips, 3 slips already. So you guys already have that. Over here for Liv, I like these 2 for unders. So I know we took a little detour there with chat. My apologies. But with the higher wins that they're expecting for Liv, a birdie average that was right at 4 out there for round 1. I like an under on Bubba and an under on Paul Casey. They were both in the bottom half of birdie makers on the Liv Tour last year. So they're not known for making birdies. They're older, right? Let's not kid ourselves. Both are well past their primes. I'm not calling them washed up. In fact, Paul Casey played really well here last year, so he's definitely still got game. Bubba has played pretty well too in a few isolated events, but the facts are that both are bottom half of the field birdie makers, right? And they're projected at the field average from round 1. So even in neutral conditions, the exact same for round 1, right? We'd be leaning on their unders because they're below tier birdie makers. And on top of that, now we have windier conditions, right? Now the wind might make things a little bit more challenging. So I thought they were unders worth taking. They have a lot of push equity there at 4. And for them to go over these projections, they'd have to gain a birdie to the field, right? Which for somebody that's a bottom half birdie maker is like a 40, 35 percentile type of outcome. So I like our chances on the other side, right? That 60, 65% outcome that we're trying to go after there, which is what we've got. And the 65%, right? That includes the push. So obviously, I would say the most likely outcome for a lot of these players would be to, go out there, make 3 or 4 birdies. So this might be a refund, but I also like our chances for them to go under. So both decent props, both are over here at 3.5 on Prize Picks. So if you're looking to get a little bit of line value, right, you've got Paul Casey over there at 3.5 and then Bubba Watson at that same number. In terms of what I like on Prize Picks, actually on the other side of things. So I like an over on Bryson birdies and an over on Cameron Smith birdies. And the reasoning here is, first off, it was about a 4 birdie average. Let's say it gets slightly more difficult. I'm projecting for about a 3.8 birdie per round average. Bryson and Cam Smith gain about a birdie to the field per round out there and Live. So they've continued to play well. Bryson has been grinding in the offseason. You've seen that on his YouTube channel. If you followed, apparently has been playing golf literally every single day. And Cam Smith is Cam Smith. The guy just is the best putter in the world. We know that he can fill it up on the greens pretty much no matter where he's putting. And if you're going to take guys to go out there and make birdies, it's these two, right? Cam Smith, your number 1 birdie maker on the PGA Tour, right? When he was still around on the PGA side, he made more birdies than everyone, than Scotty. He made more birdies than John Rahm, Rory McIlroy, right? All of them. Cam Smith also mixed in quite a few bogeys, right? Because he's a wild man off the tee, but we don't care about that with a 4.5 birdie projection, right? All we care about is him making those birdies, and that's kind of what he does, right? He's the best player in the world at making birdies. And then you've got Bryson DeChambeau up here, who, first off, the end of last season was a world killer on Live. In fact, in the major championships, he's going to be a factor this year. In fact, he might win a major championship this year, Bryson DeChambeau, and he's playing beautifully over there on Live. So I don't have any reason to think that that's going to change. He's been grinding. He's clearly one of the few Live players that still gives a shit about his game, and you want that, right? When you're taking these Live guys, like there's a few that like you can tell they're just out there to be out there. I don't want to call anyone out here, but like Pat Perez, right, is out there to be out there. And then you've got Bryson and Cam Smith that, especially with Bryson, Cam Smith, maybe he's doing a little bit more fishing these days, but he's so goddamn talented, God-given talent out there at the flat stick that he doesn't have to worry about that all that much. Bryson is still grinding. So if you're going to take some overs for today, which again, this Live Golf setup, it should be a little bit windier. They may account for that, right? And it might play to a similar average. If it plays to the round one averages, I am totally fine, right? Taking these overs on Bryson and Cam. If it is a little bit harder, it probably makes them closer to 50-50s. But if I'm going to have 50-50s, I want them on my boys Bryson and Cam Smith, right? Guys that are elite tier birdie makers. So that's what I've got for Live, some overs and some unders that I'm taking, right? Depending on what site that you're playing on. I guess that's it for the live stream. Let's see if there's any questions. We can talk Hard Rock Bet if anyone's around that wants to see that. But if not, let's get this thing rocking. Let's see. Good luck, everyone. Appreciate you, Michael. Best of luck today yourself. Good luck, Win. See you at the top. See you at the top. Hard Rock has some 3 balls. So, yeah, we do. We'll go over Hard Rock. I didn't see your comment there, but now for sure we'll look at them. They've got Neiman plus 120 versus Reed and Garcia. So, little 3-ball action. Thanks for the awesome analysis. Keep killing it. Thank you. Appreciate that, 3B. I think that's decent odds, right? You're talking about a guy who just shot a 59 going against Patrick Reed and Sergio Garcia. Reed and Garcia are inferior players, right? Neiman was actually your second favorite heading into the week. John Rahm is your favorite on all the books, and then there was Joaquin Neiman. I'm okay with that. I think plus 120 seems like decent odds. And speaking of, does Data Golf have the 3-ball stuff up for Live? Because if they do, let me cross-reference that. Yeah, they do. So you were talking about the Sergio matchup, right? So there's a plus 125 out there. There's a plus 130 out there on Joaquin Neiman. But I feel like plus 120 is not horrible. They have it as a slight negative EV play, but I think it's a decent play. I frankly don't think they're right on that one. Let's see. Full payout on Prize Picks if you mix Live and PGA. Yep, notice that. That's a good call, Fred. If you're trying to get a 3x payout, good call there. Thank you, Carolina. Have a great Saturday yourself. Cheers. And same thing to you, Birdie Man. Have a great day. And if you guys are heading out of here, which I know a lot of you guys aren't prop guys, smash that like button for me, right? It's get the algorithm, get this out there before lock for the last hour, and make sure more people can be informed for today. But outside of that, I think that's all I've got. I want to bring up Hard Rock Bet just because if 3B's down there, right, going to go through it. I know not as many people are doing the Hard Rock Bet stuff because it's like only in Florida and I think like Tennessee. There's another state that has the Hard Rock Bet stuff, but let's bring it up for those that are playing, right? I know there's some fellow Floridians in here, right, that want to talk some props. So what we'll focus on is the 3-balls. Do they have any head-to-heads? They do. I like the head-to-heads, but they usually don't have that many to choose from. So what have we got? Cole versus Rose. That's priced pretty accurately, I'd say. Same thing there. Same thing there. Yeah, they're pretty good with these. I feel like they have a pretty good projection system for doing these head-to-heads. So Aberg versus JT is even money. I'm tempted to want to take JT, but I'll probably stay away. I mean, they're pretty sharp on these, to be frank. They've got Cantlay versus Scheffler. I would definitely want Scheffler, but he's minus 135. And then Dietrich versus Griot. Like, I'd want Griot, but I don't know if I want to lay 15% juice. So, all right, I don't love those. Let's take a look at these 3-balls, though. So we got Scheffler, Dietrich, Aberg. This is a real close one. I would say, if anything, you take Scotty there at plus money, right? I think I'd rather have this plus money versus Aberg and Dietrich than going minus 135 versus Cantlay. Like, as bad as it sounds, I'm not worried about Dietrich in round 3, like whatsoever in that 3-ball. Like, I don't want to say he has no chance, but he definitely has a low chance, right, to beat an Aberg and a Scotty Scheffler. Let's see. We have Morikawa versus Fitz and Hoagie. I don't hate Fitz, but that's probably a stay away. Let's see. Thigala versus Poston and Hubbard. I like this one. In fact, I may actually log in and bet this one here on stream. So Poston
has been playing consistent golf. I get it, right? But Theegala is just a better player. And on POA, he's a much better putter than what you have at JT Poston. Hubbard, decent player himself, right? I think plus 250 is fine on him, but I think the value here is to hit Theegala being slept on. So I'm probably going to bet that one. Let's see, Rory versus Xander and Shank. Yeah, no thank you. I don't want to play any of those bums. You've got Tom Kim versus Davis and Van Rooyen. I wish he had a little bit more juice on Tom Kim. If it was plus 150, I would probably get there. Zane Hoot versus Cole and Noren. Cole plus 150 is not a, I feel like it's not a horrible idea, which speaking of, let me bring up the data golf thing real quick. So 1 second. I want to see if that's the best odds on the market for that Eric Cole prop. I'm going to take it. If it's not, I'm not going to. Eric Cole is plus 150 on every book. So yeah, that's the industry standard number, not a good number. So we'll stay away from it. All right, you have another matchup? Let's see. What is it? So 3B says, Neiman versus Rahm head-to-head matchup should be spicy. I agree. What are the odds on that, right? It's got to be Rahm minus some money, right? You can imagine. Let's check it out, though. It is a spicy one, though. Only minus 125. Yeah, as much as I like Neiman, right, he's course fit, it's John Rahm, right? So, like, I'd probably, this minus 125 doesn't feel like enough. It feels like he should be favored by more than minus 125. This Eric Cole one, we'll go ahead and take out here. If I was going to enter anything on Hard Rock Bet, and I very well may go enter these as soon as we get off stream here, it'd be this John Rahm matchup. Now that you mention it, yeah, I really like that one. And then Sahith Theegala, I think he should be the favorite in this group, right? I think he should be closer to like plus 135, plus 140. So that's a spot that I would take there. But that is all I've got for the stream, guys. I appreciate everyone out there. Best of luck with your round 3 lineups. Let's go out there, cash a few DFS lineups, go out there, hopefully cash out on a few prop slips, and have ourselves a Saturday. Whether you're watching golf, whether you're going out there, enjoying time with family and friends, enjoy today, right? Go out there, take a little bit of time to rest, and let's have ourselves a weekend. Best of luck, and I'll see you guys